Some people arrive in this world with what feels like a doorway ajar between the visible and the invisible. You might name them sensitive, empathic, intuitive. A poet might say they are touched. A mystic might say they are gifted. I will describe them as they are in essence, those born very near the veil. Do you recognize yourself as one of the near the veil people? Comment 1 if you've always felt unusually open, intuitive, or empathic. Comment 2 if you're unsure but curious about what this kind of sensitivity might mean for you. For these people, reality is not confined to surfaces. It includes what shudders behind them, and that, dear friends, is at once a weight to carry and a vocation to fulfill. I have encountered many such souls. They move gently. They hear more than they talk. They weep where others would laugh. They frequently feel misplaced not from damage, but because they hold too much of the world within. A breeze, a vocal inflection, a fleeting glance, these all address them in inexpressible ways. They are not fragile, they are open. Yet in a culture that prizes armor and distance openness, can become perilous. Understand, a highly sensitive person is not merely tuned to feelings. They are permeable to the unconscious. They register not only others' emotions, but also what others push down. They gather the cast-off shards of collective psycho-rage, grief, and fear, soaking them up like psychic sponges. Hence their frequent fatigue. Hence their need for solitude, not out of dislike for others, but because they are perpetually bearing others within. Yet their sensitivity extends beyond relationships. It is archetypal. They live under the sway of the great inner powers, what I term archetypes. Their dreams teem with animals, crones, children, conflagrations, deluges, endings, and beginnings. Their inner life is vivid, mythic, alchemical, and because they lack a language for such experiences, they frequently assume they are defective. Others label them too emotional, too tender, too intense. I insist otherwise. If you recognize yourself here, attend carefully. Nothing is wrong with you, but you are at risk. I say this in full seriousness. A sensitive soul, unless grounded in the self, shielded by understanding, and steadied through inner work, can be swallowed by the very depths they were meant to traverse. A quiet warning threads through my work, often implied, rather than declared. The more keenly you register the unconscious, the greater the danger of being consumed by it. The unconscious does not distinguish your soul from the world's ache. It does not assign ownership to suffering. It simply declares, here lies what is repressed, what demands to be witnessed. Thus, an untrained sensitive may conflate the collective with the personal. They may claim sadness as theirs when it echoes generational grief. They may call fear their own when it is the room's shared anxiety. They may think they are ill when in fact they are inundated by what remains unvoiced. Without learning the contours of self, they risk dissolving into the very chaos they were meant to behold. I recall a trembling young man, aged 24, chronically sleep-deprived. He felt as if he bore the world on his shoulders. In a church he would cry. Beside a dying tree he wept. He could offer no reason and felt ashamed. "I'm too sensitive," he said. "I can't function." Yet his dreams brimmed with symbols, angels offering him soil wolves tending wounds that were not his, a city crumbling, while he remained intact at its center. I told him, "You are not sick. You are a vessel, but no one taught you how to hold." We therefore began not to erase his sensitivity, but to render it conscious. That is the essential task. Unconscious sensitivity turns into suffering. Conscious sensitivity transforms into vision. If you are deeply sensitive, start by accepting that your task is not to conform to the world as given. You are called to feel what others sidestep, to hear what others mute, to perceive what others refuse. Yet this cannot be done in isolation, nor in an unreflective way, or it will swallow you. Every sensitive person reaches a phase where the darkness they take in becomes overpowering. It may manifest as depression, anxiety, bodily distress, or what is sometimes called a spiritual emergency. It feels as though the soul is saturated and the light cannot pass. This is not defeat. It is initiation. Have you ever reached a point where the weight of what you feel became overwhelming? Comment 1 if you've passed through that darkness and found meaning on the other side. Comment 2 if you're in it now, or still wondering what it's asking of you. When the unconscious selects you as a vessel, it insists on your transformation. Dreams intensify. The outer world starts reflecting the inner. You are drawn into uncanny meetings, synchronicities, losses, and awakenings. Ground seems to give way. This is the threshold at which many cannot remain the same. Some numb out, some splinter, some cling to a mask and feign normalcy. But a few, only a few, consent to the descent. They fall not into despair, but into depth, undertaking the sacred labor of individuation. Then the true path of the sensitive opens not as a victim, but as a mystic, not as damaged, but as initiated. Once you enter the descent, what the ancients named catabasis, your sensitivity, once mistaken for fragility, reveals itself as a threshold provided you do not avert your gaze. The sensitive must descend knowingly into the underworld of the psyche. This is no mere figure of speech. It is lived reality. The descent is not imagined. It is withstood. In dreams, it appears as tunnels, cellars, caverns, endless stairs, drowning or burial. Do not fear these images. They are initiatory, inviting you to confront what has been interred, not only within you, but within the human collective. This must be underscored. The highly sensitive are not only registering personal wounds, they are attuning to the culture's repressed soul. Their bodies mirror the world's muteness. And when that silence crescendos, they are the ones who shake. They feel the burden of unlived life, not just their own, but that of others. Without learning the architecture of self and anchoring in something deeper than emotion, they drift between others' pain and their own bewilderment. Hence, many sensitives disappear into roles: healer, listener, empath, peacemaker. These costumes provide fleeting identity, but they are masks. They cannot carry the soul's full weight. Only the self can. The self is not the ego or your self-concept. It is your wholeness, conscious and unconscious light, and shadow feminine, and masculine wounded and wise. For sensitives, discovering the self is not optional. It is survival. I once worked with a woman who dreamt she was swallowed by the earth. At a dinner party, she dropped through the floor unnoticed and arrived in a womb-like chamber where an ancient presence painted symbols across her skin. She woke in tears, confused. I told her, "You are not being buried. You are being reborn. Your sensitivity has taken you as far as it can alone. Now the unconscious is initiating you into the deeper pattern." The figure painting her in darkness was the self reclaiming her from the persona. If you are highly sensitive, your task is not to flee the world, but to enter it by way of your own soul. This starts with boundaries, psychic limits, energetic sovereignty. Sensitivity without boundaries turns into absorption. With boundaries, it becomes intuition. Do you see? You are not here to carry people, but to perceive them. You are not here to save the world, but to reflect its forgotten facets. This takes rigorous discipline, not repression, but discernment. What is mine? What is not? What am I feeling? What am I receiving? Where do I end and the other begin? Dreams assist in this training by refining your symbols. Overgiving may appear as leaking containers, flooded rooms, open wounds. Psychic invasion may show up as strangers in your house, unlocked doors, animals gazing through windows. These are not arbitrary. They are soul messages. Do not dismiss them. Record them. Voice them. Sit with them. Let the images work on you. This is not superstition. It is the sacred speech of your unconscious. Over time, a change unfolds. Dreams alter. Symbols evolve. Where there were floods, a river appears. Where there were wounds, a scar remains. Where faceless figures stood, guides emerge. The unconscious is responsive to relationship. It longs to be witnessed. When the sensitive person stops rejecting the gift, stops drowning in it, and starts engaging with it, the unconscious begins to cooperate. The outer world stays the same, but you transform. You start to recognize emotions that are not yours, to choose what you meet, rather than absorb automatically. You begin to honor bodily signals, dream imagery, and intuitive knowing. Gradually, you sense something rare, a center, not a concept of identity, but a living presence within. That is the self, and from that ground, sensitivity becomes a precise gift rather than a weight. You cease reacting to everything and start responding to what is true. This is transformative, for most people are blind to their inner life. You, however, were born to feel it not as a victim, but as a mirror that has first turned inward. Having grasped the need for dissent and the value of boundaries, not to exclude the world, but to admit the self, you must grasp the next phase: initiation. Once the unconscious realizes you are listening, that you enter dreams with reverence rather than flee them, it shifts its speech. It stops pursuing you with images of collapse and begins to woo you with images of becoming. Sensitives who reach this point perceive the world as a mirror. Every relationship encounter and sensation feels charged, as if carrying a message. This is not fantasy. It is the awakening of the archetypal field. You are starting to perceive what I have long called the myth you are already living. Do not mistake my meaning. This is not mere figurative language. The soul inhabits myth as the body inhabits air. We are never apart from it, only unaware. The sensitive are born near the boundary between personal story and collective narrative. They often feel like outsiders, not from lack of belonging, but because they carry a knowledge the world neglects. Each life is a symbolic journey. With this recognition, sensitivity finds ballast. You are no longer swept away by feeling. You start to track it. The question shifts from "why do I feel this?" to "what does it signify? What is being stirred within me?" For the sensitive, feeling is not merely emotional. It is oracular, the nervous system serving as an antenna. When aligned with the self, these signals guide rather than immobilize. Yet the road is not always calm. A deeper stratum awaits. The sensitive soul must eventually encounter what I call the archetype of the wounded seer, the person who perceives and feels in excess, and must hold their knowledge in a culture that refuses it. This is the real burden of the empath, not merely feeling, but being compelled to witness. Bearing witness is demanding. It means carrying what others suppress, speaking what others refuse, entering spaces and sensing the unspoken ghosts. They're dreaming of what approaches and not always being trusted. Even so, if your soul has summoned you to this path, the response is not martyrdom, but deliberate awake involvement. The dream world shifts again. Figures appear, guides, elders, ancestors, animals who accompany rather than pursue you. The once ominous forest can be traversed. The cave turns generative. The flood becomes a rite of renewal. Such signals show the unconscious no longer regards you as passive, but as initiated. You are not just sensitive now. You are becoming a mystic. Here is the paradox. The nearer you draw to the self, the lonelier you may feel. For most people are unprepared to live like this, still asleep, projecting, anesthetizing, performing. Do not resent them. They are you in an earlier guise. Your role is not persuasion, but embodiment, living with such integrity, presence, and inner lucidity that your existence becomes a mirror in which others can see themselves more clearly. Thus, the conscious, sensitive person's task today is to re-enchant the world with meaning, not by dogma or doctrine, but by how one is. Your dreams function as scripture. Your body is the temple. Your silence is prayer. And your pain is the alchemical fire fusing your scattered pieces back into wholeness. Few endure this and remain the same, yes. Those who do emerge do not come back as who they were, but as who they truly are. In that return, they help the world recall its own soul. Now, after descending into shadow and ascending through symbol, we turn to the final movement of the sensitive soul's journey, re-entering the world while preserving the soul's depth. This, I have learned, is the most delicate work. Awakening is one thing. Staying awake amidst a world that urges sleep, pulling you back into persona, into roles, into flattening the sacred, with language too thin for mystery, is another. Still, the soul remembers. After treading the inward spiral and undergoing the initiation only the unconscious can arrange, you cannot revert to your former self. That self was engineered to endure. Now you are summoned to truly live. As you re-enter life, are you living from presence rather than performance? Comment 1 if you're practicing boundaries and conscious sensitivity day by day. Comment 2 if you feel yourself slipping back into old roles and want steadier footing. Here is a final quiet warning, the sort only the initiated can perceive. Your sensitivity is no longer personal property. It is the instrument by which the self encounters the world, not to control or evade it, but to witness it. You now carry symbols, holding images, and weaving meaning. The old world will still demand explanations, justification, efficiency, and simplicity. Yet, you are no longer confined to those. You are complex because you now hold a container for the full range of human experience. You recognize not only what is favored, but also what is exiled, ancestral, and archetypal. The hurt that once forced retreat has turned into an entryway. The dreams that used to frighten you now teach. The fire that once scorched you, empty, now lights the way. You might still shake, but now the trembling is grounded in presence. This is your way of service. Service is no longer about doing more, rescuing everyone, or being constantly accessible. You serve by remaining rooted in your reality, your living myth, and your embodied understanding. For a sensitive soul who has crossed their own darkness and returned with light, threatens the world's deceptions. Such a person cannot be manipulated, purchased, or diminished again. Their quiet communicates. Their look discloses. Their life turns symbolic, not as mere metaphor, but as truth, and the world starts to change even subtly around them. This is not egoic inflation. It is the mystery of the self-embodied. Embodiment, if it is real, demands discipline. From here the work becomes precise. You learn to hold what you feel without becoming it. This is individuation in practice, not ego-aggrandizement, but the self-establishing center. Begin with discernment. Is this mine, or the collective's? Ask it. In the moment, a mood surges in the room that suddenly grows heavy in the dream, that leaves a residue at dawn. What is yours you metabolize. What is not you witness and return firmly without hostility to the wider field. This is boundary as hygiene, not barrier. Sovereignty, not isolation. Let your dreams continue their apprenticeship of you. They will now shift tone from alarm to instruction. Flooded houses become rivers with banks. Unlocked doors become thresholds with guardians. Strangers turn to guides who ask for offerings. Attention, honesty time. Practice active imagination. Meet the figures. Listen to their demands. Negotiate terms. The point is not spectacle. The point is integration, shadow energies retasked. As courage, eros dignified. As relatedness, rather than fantasy power tempered into conscience. This is the transcendent function at work, the psyche holding opposites, long enough for a third way to arrive. Expect enantiodromia, clarity one day, opacity the next. Do not overcorrect. Rhythm, not righteousness, matures the self. Keep two small rights, one for ascent to ground luminosity, so it doesn't scorch, one for descent to warm darkness, so it doesn't freeze. When the old persona returns, efficient, pleasing, over-adapted, thank it for its service and decline its leadership. You are not withdrawing from the world. You are re-entering it with an internal governor that prevents fusion frenzy and performative care. Service now becomes exact. You stop rescuing. You start reflecting. In meetings, you choose one true sentence over 10 clever ones. In conflict, you set a boundary early, rather than apologizing later for your bitterness. In company, you let silence carry weight so others can hear themselves. This is cultural ethics at the level of presence. You do not convert rooms. You conduct them, meaning through matter, soul, through schedule, so that what is repressed has a chance to become conscious without shame. The wounded seer archetype matures here. You still register what others cannot bear, but you are no longer porous by accident. You are permeable by vow. The body remains an instrument tuned and tended. The dream remains a scripture read and answered. The world stays loud. You stay exact. Sensitivity ceases to be a floodplain and becomes a channel. You carry images, not burdens. You witness, not absorb. And in that quiet precision, reality thickens with meaning. Others may not know why the air steadies around you, only that it does. That suffices. It is enough. The self is not a concept. It is an awareness field that recalls its source. It is you, and also beyond you. It is the root where your sensitivity now draws strength instead of suffering, clarity instead of overwhelm, and vision instead of sorrow. Therefore, if you are sensitive and have endured this passage, descending and rising, traveling with the unconscious, until its cadence lives in your breath, know this: you are not fragile anymore. You are feral. You are not merely reactive. You are responsive. You are not broken. You are whole. And within your wholeness, there is room for the world not to be hauled on your back, but to be held in witnessing. That suffices. It is everything. So go on, not back to performance, but ahead into presence. Allow your dreams to keep speaking and your body to keep guiding. Let your silence hold gravity, and let your soul, an ancient, luminous vessel of truth, shine gently for those who still think they are too much. You are not excessive. You are what the world forgot it needed. You are the mirror, the myth, the medicine. And now you are free. What does freedom look like for a sensitive soul in your everyday world? Comment 1. if you feel like the mirror, the myth, the medicine in your circles. Comment 2 if you're still learning to hold your light without carrying everyone else's.